Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a list of some fantasy books with modern settings. I know a lot of times when we think fantasy, we think medieval, and we have a certain idea of what fits within the box of fantasy. But what's great about fantasy is it doesn't really fit within a box. It can be so many different things. And I know when I say fantasy with modern settings, some of you might think so urban fantasy, which one of these I would say very comfortably fits within urban fantasy. But a lot of the rest of these, I don't know that we think of these when we think urban fantasy. So I kind of wanted to set aside a specific video and I wanted to dedicate time to talking about these books that have different settings than what we might typically expect. Most of these generally have electricity, more modern advancements with technology, glasses, which, what do you know, today's video is sponsored by GlassesUSA.com. Many of you know I used GlassesUSA.com before I ever worked with them. I love their glasses. They are an online glasses service, so it takes the middleman out of the equation and therefore makes the prices a lot less. And also you don't even have to leave your house. You can scan your current glasses if you need to figure out what your prescription is. You can do that using their app. They have name brands, in-house brands, prescription sunglasses, blue light blocking glasses. They have so many different styles, shapes. I have this pair that I wear all the time. It's my clear pair. It's the one I'm basically wearing in every video, and I just think it's the ultimate neutral. I also really love these Ray-Bans. It's the kind of classic circle shape, and it's got the gold frame, although these have, there's a lot of glasses that have kind of this shape, but in different colors. So I love having the slightly rectangular glasses and also a circle shape. This is, I think, really great too for sweater weather, which it is currently not where I live, but I love both of these. They also have, like I said, prescription sunglasses. You can also just get glasses without the prescriptions if you'd like. If you're somebody who uses screens a lot, you don't have to have a prescription. You can just get the blue light blocking lenses. But with their sunglasses, I usually show you mine, but I think they're currently sold out in the ones that I like a lot. But I will have them linked in general. I have these two pairs linked, as well as just GlassesUSA.com in general. And they also have a try-on feature. So if you've never used their service, never bought glasses online, and you're wondering what they would look like, their try-on feature, you just upload a picture of yourself, and then you can virtually try on the glasses. And I've always had a lot of success with that. I really end up liking how the glasses turn out. These are just a couple of my favorites. So I'll have these specific ones and GlassesUSA.com linked in the description bar down below. The first one I'm going to mention not only kind of defies expectations when it comes to fantasy settings, but I think a lot of people don't even realize it's a modern setting. One, because of the cover, and when people talk about this story, I don't know that they always really mention that it takes place in modern day, to the point where the characters, there's actually references to cell phones, video games, things like that, and that would be sort of Kaige. So a lot of you have probably heard about this book because of the themes of motherhood, because it's so tragic, because there's a lot to do with propaganda in the story. You have this country that has been told, you are the warriors, you are the ones that are supposed to protect the rest of our people if there is ever an attack. And so you have this whole island essentially filled with people who believe it is their obligation, their duty to protect everyone if somebody invades. They are a very militaristic society, they are very loyal, and they don't really question what has been told to them, but you also see cracks in this line of thinking with some of our characters. We have a young man who is the son of the other main perspective. He is starting to see things slightly differently. He might start to actually recognize when he is being fed propaganda, and then his mother is sort of torn between being proud of her son for recognizing the truth, but also fearing what can happen if he is too vocal, if he defies too much. And there's also a magic system that has to do with water magic, and the action scenes in this are phenomenal. It really is a heartbreaking story. But for the first chunk of the book, you're like, what am I reading? Because it will give you flashbacks of the mother's life when she was younger. And it's almost like a CW superhero vigilante show. And you're like, I don't know what this is. This seems like not at all what everybody has been telling me. And like I said, you start hearing kids talk about video games and cell phones, and you're like, this is this book? And I know I was definitely caught off guard by that. But this is part to do with their society being kept separate from so much of the rest of the world, is their society isn't necessarily caught up when it comes to technology and incorporating that into their society. And I just think the author did such a great job with it. Man, I am so excited for when this author hopefully someday writes more books. I believe they are working on more, but that's neither here nor there. Next up is a story that has swept a lot of people off their feet. It has sort of blown up recently, and that would be the Atlas Six. The best way that I can describe it is Six of Crows meets Inception, Christopher Nolan's Inception, because the magic is very, very bizarre. It's kind of hard to follow. I don't know how much sometimes I am even really following it. It's almost like an aesthetic. And it has somewhat to do with science and black holes and space and time, but as far as the rules and limitations go, I don't know that I could even really pinpoint it. And I don't know that the characters could either, because they are trying to explore how magic can be used. The setting for this very much is our world, modern society. The difference though is that there are a lot of magic users, and it's not a secret like a lot of other stories where there are magic users in our own world and everybody has to keep it a secret, or it's shapeshifters, but you can't let people know that vampires actually exist or werewolves actually exist. It's not really that. There is reference to other mythological beings. You have certain individuals that can sort of manipulate the rules of physics. Like I said, the magic itself is hard to pin down, and there's a lot going on, but the setting itself is our setting, and I think that's a very difficult thing to do. I think anytime you try to add in any kind of fantastical elements to modern society, it so often for readers brings up the question of, well, but wouldn't this have changed in society? Wouldn't this be different? And I think the author does a good job of really not making that important to the plot. The 6 main characters are given an opportunity to study within the Library of Alexandria, and they get to have access to these very important works. And in doing this, they have a lot of power. However, it's very important that that is not going to slip into the wrong hands. And also, in order for them to continue their studies, they might end up having to be pitted against each other because only so many people can really have access. So you're seeing some character studies, some character work with these characters, but then also you're seeing what they're capable of for the quest of knowledge. After that, we have a book that is technically, I believe, considered middle grade, but I would say also falls really nicely under the young adult category, and that would be the Arithmetist. Many times when I talk about the Arithmetist, I mention how much I absolutely love the magic system, which has to do with drawing these different shapes, and they're generally circular type of shapes, but different other shapes around it create different amounts of defense. But then also you want to draw these little things that are monsters, essentially, and you send those off to attack your enemy to try to break through their defenses. And there's a magic school where some of the students are learning how to use magic, but alongside those magic users, there's also just the regular forms of academics. And our main character is somebody who does not have magic, but he befriends somebody who does. And on top of that, the setting itself, in some ways, you almost don't realize it's more of a modern setting because it's also somewhat of an alternate version of our world. And the perfect way to describe that is you have the United Isles. So not the United States, but the United Isles. And it's so obviously the shape of North America, but it's broken up to where basically every state has become an island. So I'm going to zoom in really quick so you can see how it's broken apart. Some of the areas have kept their own names. For example, Texas is still Texas, because of course it is. But then you have something like what you would typically find as Colorado, you have as Denver, or there's a whole area that's just Rocky Mountains. So there are some tweaks and changes. And that's another thing, kind of like what I was saying with Sword of Kaige, that most of the time when talking about these stories, you talk about the characters, you talk about the plot, you talk about the magic, and these settings sort of get left behind in the descriptions, understandably so, because they're not necessarily the main focus or the main thing that pulls people in for some of these, but that's a fun detail about the Arithmetist that I think a lot of people don't really realize when they go to check it out. Jumping back into adult fantasy, we have Vicious and its sequel, Vengeful. These are 2 of my favorite books. I absolutely love these, and they follow, the first one anyway, follows these 2 main characters who, when they were in college, were clearly best of friends, and then in present day timeline, you are seeing that they hate each other, they want to kill each other, and one of them is in prison, but he plans to escape, and then all he's setting out to do is kill this other individual. Victor and Eli are these 2 main characters' names, but beyond just having a split timeline, you have a fractured timeline. That's a big thing that gets talked about when talking about the series, and the way that V.E. Schwab pieces everything together as you go, I really enjoyed. I think it really makes you on the edge of your seat. And it is a modern setting. So you have people, I said they go to college, that's where the two characters met. So you see modern society, people have phones, people have technology, people have a lot of the everyday average things that you would expect of modern life, except for there are some individuals that have magic. However, kind of the opposite of what I was saying before about the Atlas 6. In this story, this is still a phenomenon. It's a conspiracy. A lot of people don't believe that magic exists, but Victor and Eli, when they're in college for one of their research papers, decide they are going to experiment and find out if, they call them EOs, extraordinary. They decide they're going to try and figure out if there's some truth to a lot of these theories. And then last on the list, we have Holly Black's new book, Book of Night. The magic system revolves around the ability to manipulate shadows. There are some individuals that have magic associated with their shadows. There are some people that are even going so far as to try and live on through their shadows because your shadow can be separated from you. And some people are trying to figure out a way for their shadows to gain more sentience and to maybe be aligned with their shadows in that fashion, kind of with their own souls attached. And our main character is not somebody who necessarily has abilities with this magic, but they have a bit of a history when it comes to criminal activity, and there is some criminal activity that is involved with the magic itself. And because of the modern society, the modern setting, something that I think that Holly Black did that I found to be kind of fun world building is experimenting with the way that, for example, celebrities would utilize this sort of thing. So sometimes it's more of a cosmetic thing where you can make your shadow look different. So celebrities will have their shadows look like certain shapes and designs and things like that. And I'm like, that is something that would definitely happen if it was possible. So those little details, even though I definitely felt like the magic itself, I wish we could have explored it and understood it a little bit better as the reader. I do think some of the world building details that were tied to this more modern setting definitely were very fun to see. That's it for some fantasy stories with modern settings. Feel free to, of course, leave your own recommendations in the comment section down below. If you're interested in checking any of these out, if I have more information about them, I'll have them linked. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. Thanks again to ClassesUSA.com for working with me. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.